I start my classes on time, so I figure I should do the same with this sort of thing. My name is David Thompson. I teach at the University of Denver Law School. We call it the Sturm College of Law, and that cost about $20 million. Sturm College of Law at the University of Denver had a laptop initiative. Now it's called the laptop requirement. Went to a very interesting session earlier today about how to implement a laptop requirement. And we got through that. But the question was what to do with that. Once you have the laptops, what are you going to do with them? I teach a course called Lawyering Process. That's what we call the Legal Research and Writing class. I have 2 sections that I teach each semester. And I also have a long history of legal practice. I practiced for 21 years in private practice and government practice. I switched to full-time teaching a couple of years ago. I have a long history of using computers in my practice. Indeed, before I went to law school, I spent a couple of summers teaching programming, Basic and Basic Plus, on a Hewlett-Packard 1170 machine. It's about the size of 3 refrigerators. 1980, it had less computing power than these laptops we carry around. It's now in the Smithsonian Institution, where it belongs. But, so I had a long history of this and using computers in my practice, and somehow that word got around and it kind of fell to me to try to figure out what to do with these laptops. I'm at the point in dealing with technology where I'm starting to run out of patience. I'm starting to run out of patience with the whole idea that this stuff is cool and it's fun. It is all those things, and I feel that myself, and I'm involved in it. I like my iPod, just like everybody else, because it's cool and it's fun. But from a teaching point of view, what I really want to know is how I'm going to use this technology in a way to be a more effective teacher. That's really what I give a damn about right now. A year ago, I was at the CALI conference and I heard a fabulous little 2-word phrase that I had never heard before. It was my number 1 takeaway from the CALI conference last summer. Here it is. You know, you have those users that are afraid of their laptops, or they're afraid of software, they're afraid they're going to break it, they won't learn the stuff. And I never really heard a good explanation of why, other than it was simply some form of fear that I didn't understand. This phrase means the users who are comfortable with technology have a high level of convenience enthusiasm. That is, they recognize the convenience that it brings them and they're enthusiastic about it, and that's what gets them over the hump of figuring out how the software works or going to that class that you offer them. So I think what we need to be focusing on in the next few years is how we raise the level of convenience, enthusiasm for everybody else, and then build off of that. What I'm interested in is getting everybody there and building off of that. Seeing what we can really do, not to make class necessarily cooler, although there are good things about greater interactivity in teaching, and I'm all for that. But actually using this technology, and that's not just to surf the web and download things from the iTunes store and do those convenience things, check our email from wherever we are. But rather as teachers to actually use the technology to do something we couldn't do without it. Not just more convenience, but real learning. That's my interest, and that's what I want to talk to you about, because I think I've got a story about the use of a piece of software in a particular kind of teaching that amounts to that. So let me share that with you. It's about this software called CaseMap, and it's in the form of teaching the legal research and writing class, most especially in teaching the writing part of it. There's nothing especially magic about CaseMap, although it does some things that lots of other legal-related software out there does not quite do. But what I was interested in was using it in a way that would actually help jump a step that students all struggle to jump in the course that I teach. Another way of saying I've run out of patience with talks about technology that don't have a whole lot of connection to the real problem is they haven't really defined what the problem is that they're trying to solve. It just must be out there, and this is cool, so let's try it. That's what I'm losing patience with. And so I'm going to start right there. What's the problem that I think this solves? From a teacher's point of view. Here's how I define it in these few bullet points, and rather than read them to you, I'll lay them out on the screen. And maybe you'll ask a question if it's not clear. Or take issue with me about how I've defined the problem. Make sense to everybody? Perfect. You see what I'm getting at? Good. A little anecdote here. Every law school, every few years, I'm sure you've probably been involved in this in one way or another, goes through that particular summer bar review results thing, where the bar pass rate has dropped 3 points, 4 points, 5 points. And suddenly there's this big fuss and falderall about it, and committees get formed. It happens, I'm sure, at every law school, most law schools, every few years. So we had one of those recently. And one of our more forthright senior professors called for a meeting with the chairman of the board of law examiners and got his attention and sat across the room with this person and said, what is it? Tell me what it is that you think students don't do when they fail the bar exam. What is the thing? And he came right back. They start writing before they've done enough thinking. That was his answer. So that's how I define the problem. If we could then come on, throw tomatoes. Tell me where this doesn't make sense. Any disagreement? Yes.
Well, I just am thinking about how I do this sort of writing myself. When I'm thinking and linking, I have to be writing because I need it to be visual. I need to draw circles on paper and put topics in them and draw circles and arrows. So I don't think you can totally divorce the whole thinking and construct phase from the writing phase.
Fair.
Maybe you didn't mean to do that simplistic.
That's fair. That's fair, and it's a good revision. I would only say, with first-year students in the fall who are just learning this, that for them, actually starting the writing before they've done enough thinking sometimes gets them into problems, although that's a generalization, and there's some students for which it's not a problem. Because they've done enough writing and they're comfortable enough with it, that for them, it helps for them to start writing and then back up. There was another, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you think that the process of beginning to physically put something down on paper makes them somehow commit to their idea in their mind and then they can't back off and revise?
Yes and no. I mean, there's certainly examples of that. I think the software that you're going to see in a minute gives them flexibility in a way that actually writing it in a piece of paper, or worse, of course, putting it in the Word document. I think it's even worse in the computer writing field than it is in paper. We can tear up paper, but actually deleting a file that was the beginning of our work, I think, is a little harder than crumpling up the paper out of hand.
My concern is similar, I think. Thinking and linking, to me, infers an A to B linear process, whereas the process that the student is enduring or experiencing is really an A to C to B to F, back to A again, and G, I mean, I don't know if this is going to impact what you're going to say about CaseMap and what it can do, but I get nervous when I see things made so simple. You know, A to B is the linear two-stop route for this bus or whatever.
Also a good revision, an excellent comment, thank you. I'm intentionally putting it on this slide in its plainest form, and you will see how the software addresses your concern in the way that we used it, I think. Though if you don't, please raise your hand again and let me know. Yes?
Before you get into your presentation, I would say, which I hope it goes through. The problem here is you're saying we have a group of people who are not good at thinking. And the other side is, aha, we are going to make these people better at thinking. I'm sure that's what we say we're doing in education, but we also have a bunch of people who are good at thinking. They become good at thinking. They leave good at thinking, but better informed. And the people who are bad at thinking, it's really an ambitious program to think we can make them good at thinking.
Fair enough. I guess all I'm saying is, well, this is my goal. If we could do these kinds of things, have we achieved every one of them for every student in every situation? No, probably not. But is there a piece of software that can jump a leap that is legal writing teachers, for the most part, have always struggled with some of their students? That's my story today. What I say is that this CaseMap software and the way that we use it supports cognition, and that to some extent, not perfectly, not for every student in exactly the same way, it addresses the writing before thinking problem. This little diagram tries to summarize, before you see it, what CaseMap does. On the left hand, you do research. When you're in a legal writing course in the fall, we analyze legal authorities, statutes, and cases. What we're trying to get to is synthesizing an application, these 1, 2, and 3 steps. CaseMap in the middle has these buckets that you put to collect your facts, objects, extracts, and issues. Issues is essentially the beginnings of an outline. And you'll see that in a bit. I call that the thinking and linking phase. You go in and out of it, absolutely. Thank you for that revision. You start here, then you write something down, then you go back here and back and forth. It isn't really a separate process, but I think it helps, and I'm going to try and illustrate how. In law school classes, the focus is really on an excerpt, oftentimes for a narrow issue. But in practice, of course, cases address multiple issues, and sometimes first-year students struggle to file them in one category. The first step, analyzing the authority, there's this Porter v. Higgins case that came up in the problem that we had last fall. And of course, like every case, there are several headnotes, because there are several different legal things that it addresses: trade secrets, reasonableness, executive or management, an employment matter, a dispute over an employment agreement and whether someone's outside the non-compete clause or inside. Trade secrets, and the opinion goes on and on and on. And the student needs to learn how to classify parts of it, what it says about management, executive or management as a standard, and classify part of it in a trade secrets bucket. And that's a little bit of the struggle in the first phase, analyzing the authority. Here's a screenshot from CaseMap. At the end of the slides, I'm actually going to bring it up and show you what a student did with it during the fall. But within the presentation, I thought it would be helpful to see it straight up. Along the left-hand side are the buckets that you can put things in. Conceptually, CaseMap is no more complicated than 4 spreadsheets in Excel. That's really all it is. And some fairly sophisticated linking capability between them. That's really all it is. It's a database program by design. It's used in practice. I'll get to that in a bit. It's pretty widely used in practice today. So here is a screen capture, and there's the Porter v. Higgins case, and you can see that under notes and linked issues, which I'm going to get to in a minute, we've got executive or management, some information about sales calls and things that they did. So they're beginning to realize that Porter v. Higgins really stands for several different things and different extracts that they've captured about that as they've done their legal research. Turning to the second phase, the synthesis phase. On the one hand, initially students may simply write a series of case briefs because to some extent that's what they're doing in their doctrinal classes. But what we have to get them to do and teach them to do in the fall especially, and build on that in the spring, is the ability to synthesize and see connections between several different cases and what they say about so like Y and Z case have 2 tests, an X and Y, address test A and test B. Often students struggle with keeping that straight and figuring out how to use which case for what purpose. And the third phase of legal writing is the school application piece of the classic IRAC analysis. I'm sure you're all familiar with the issue, rule, application, and conclusion. The A part is the one they struggle with, and connecting authorities to client facts is something they have to do to learn how to be a good legal writer. The bucket in CaseMap, the spreadsheet in CaseMap called facts, helps students see the connection between a legal issue and a particular client fact. Here's that screenshot. It's the fact screen. So here's the fact we have. We actually have a date on it from our fact pattern that they've been given. If she access and maintain email surveys, maybe that's trade secret stuff, they start to see the link over to trade secrets on the issue screen. So at CALI conferences, you've always got to explain how it was actually pulled off. So here's a slide about that. It was in the first year of a laptop requirement. We deployed the software all licensed and ready to go on a laptop image. We also provided it on a CD-ROM with installation assistance, and some of the wonderful people who helped with that are here, Joan Pope and Jessica Hogan. And then we had training sessions in the first week of school for every first-year student. You know how in legal writing often the first week is the Lexis week, the Westlaw week, and the second week is the other. Our first week was CaseMap, our second week was Lexis, our third week was Westlaw. So we pushed that back another week so we can do CaseMap right at the front. and there were 2 interim assignments, 2 assignments at 2 different points in the semester when each student had to hand in a printout from their CaseMap file to their professor. So the facts and objects screen was the first thing. Are you categorizing the right facts? Have you picked up the right objects? That was handed in as a printout. And then the extract screen, the actual authorities, that's the list of your research. Typically in legal writing programs, something called a research log or the like is taught, the value of systematically keeping track of the research that you've done in some form. We had a written research log. We handed out a chart, and they made copies and filled out the form themselves. And sometimes they created an Excel spreadsheet. Sometimes they put it in a Word document. We ended up having a really difficult time as teachers comparing apples to apples. This way, we have things that look very much the same, and it's easier for us as teachers to find the potholes, the missing steps in their thinking that are going to turn into writing problems later if we don't help them fill those potholes now. So that's a bit about the implementation. At the end of the semester, we asked them to hand in their final CaseMap file on a CD as part of the portfolio of their work for the semester. In December, I did a quick take on my own students. Out of 38 or so, I had 23 that went out to fill it out. The questions were about usage, how did you use it, how thoroughly, and how useful did you think it was. And these are the results from that quick survey. Mostly for them, it's another assignment. And for the most part, students find that the legal research and writing class is the one that's pressing them the hardest. It's pushing their comfort zone. Constantly has things to hand in and feedback that comes back. Perhaps that feedback is at a standard that they're not used to from their undergraduate days. So there's always a certain rumble of complaint about the legal writing programs, at least the ones I've been familiar with and on my third. But I think this is pretty encouraging feedback that students felt that it helped them complete assignments and helped them learn for the most part. A little bit about CaseMap, why I picked it. I picked it because I thought I could figure out a way to use it in a substantive way in the class. But also, it's not a one-off piece of software from a fly-by-night shop. It's important to me that it was something that was used fairly regularly around the country. And here's some information about that. A little bit of information about who to contact at CaseSoft if you're interested. Of course, this slideshow will be available up on, I'm sure, the CALI website, and that's mostly how I think it would be useful to you to have this slide. If you'd like to send me an email, you certainly may, and I'd be glad to send you the presentation as well. So maybe now would be a good time to actually take a look at the software. But before we break and do that, let me stop and ask for a question.
How did you get the entire legal writing department to go to decide the uses? I presume you have a number of first-year legal writing.
There are 10 of us.
Yeah, and how did you get all 10?
How did I get my
to
other
agree?
9 to agree
Yeah.
to use it? It's a good question. Right, Jess? Safe travels home. I made my case for it. The director of the program and the associate dean said, we're doing it. All of those things happen. All of those things happen, yeah.
Did you, I don't think you said whether you polled the instructors, did you feel there was a marked improvement in the output of the students, the finalists, the groups, or whatever?
we're developing an assessment. This was sort of our shakedown cruise. The university has an Office of University Assessment, wonderful person there, PhD in statistics. She's terrific. She and I are working on several projects, but one of them is to develop a comprehensive assessment of it in our second year experience with it. The first year experience with it will help us to design that assessment tool. We've collected all papers in electronic format for the last 2 years as our data bank to work on that assessment process, but it's still in the works. Other questions? Okay, let's take a look at the software. I thought it would be helpful to actually show you what a student did with this in the fall semester. I have another file I can show you that's kind of the teacher's manual. I'll look at that. We'll look at that in a few minutes. But here's a file that was actually done by a student this fall. It's not perfect, but it's the real deal. When you open the file, I just double-clicked it so it started the software, like a Word document would start Word. But this number that comes up on the screen, I should explain, we do anonymous grading and people use their locker numbers. And so that's this student's locker number that's there. There's a password field. They could password protect it. We asked them not to do that so that at the end of the semester it would be easy to open them, for the teachers to open them up as part of their training. So we started on the fact screen, which is the top icon here on the left. You can move those icons around, and there are other icons, but these are the 4 that we asked them to use. We started with a student shell file. CaseMap is a very big piece of software, and we actually gave them a shell file that had some containment on it, with categories across the top that are quite changeable and customizable. We created the ones that we thought were connected well into what it was we were trying to teach. There are many other things that CaseMap can do. I'm just showing you how we used it in legal writing. So one of the things we wanted was the fact screen and object screen. That was their first assignment about 3 weeks in, after they'd been given the problem materials, and then their research, and then finally their issues screen. It researched the authorities and extracts, and the issue screen was their second assignment, and that came in a week before their first draft of their main memo for the fall semester was due. That gave us time to sit down with them, to go over the printouts, and sit down with each student and try and help them fill in any potholes that they might have had. So here are the facts. They put in a date. If they don't have a date, here's 07 question mark. They don't know the day of July in 2004. They can just leave it at question marks. They can do TBD, to be determined. It's very flexible if they don't know that yet. Then a little blurb about the fact and the source that it came from. And that will actually link over to the object screen, which I'll show you next. Here's where you categorize what it is you have. You've got the following people, the following organizations involved. You've got these documents. You may have other physical evidence.
Who creates the documents from which these facts come? You guys or the software people?
Us guys. Let me show
So
you what we...
do you all use the same assignments then?
We did for the fall semester. Everybody agreed to a unified problem so that we could pull this off. Let me show you what each teacher gave to every student on the first day of class. It's a CD containing all the materials relevant to the learning process program. Our handbook, our client problem materials, software. Now, if they bought the laptop through the school, they already had it on the image, but if they didn't, they had it on this CD the first day of school. And various links to things, the library, the LexisNexis, and the twin site for your course. Looking here for a moment under our client, here's some information about the client. There's a link to her company's website. All of this is contained on the CD. To the former company's website, also on the CD. And documents and videos, a client letter, the actual employment agreement that has the non-compete clause in it, in Adobe format. And there's the employment agreement. Every first-year student got this CD, and this is the material that they're categorizing in their facts and objects screen. So, indeed, one of the nice things about CaseMap is not only does it help you get organized, and I contend to help you with the thinking and linking process that must take place before you're ready to write, but it also ends up as an interface into your material. It becomes a window because you can link into all these files from within it. There was an article that was written in this made-up magazine about our client. That's on the CD. And so clicking here and open, within it, you can actually link into the original document. So it's not only a place to keep track of it, it becomes a window on the whole case and the material that you've collected on it. The same can be done on the research screen, and if I don't show that to you, please remind me that I should. So here's the object screen. And by getting the printout in the first few weeks, facts and objects, we could tell very quickly. Let me tell you, you read one or two of these and you could tell right away what they're missing. It's almost instantaneous as you're flipping through it. So when they come in for a 15-minute conference, you can say, you know, I looked through your CaseMap file and it looks like you're missing this or that link. So have you seen the connection between this fact and that object or whatever? Then a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks later, they're in their research period. They're doing the legal research classes. They've had Lexis and Westlaw classes. They're about 5 weeks into the semester, maybe 7. I'm not exactly sure where we put it in the syllabus. But now they've collected the research, and they've got the cases together. And what have they done? They've put in an authority name, the name of the case. They've got an extract, a piece of it that they think is segmentable and important to the fact pattern that they're asked to write a memo about. They've maybe taken a note about what they think that means. They've linked it over to an issue, which I'll get to in a minute. And indeed, they may have downloaded the very case. And let me go look at the Porter v. Higgins, because I used that in the slide earlier. And I'll show you that. There's Porter v. Higgins, and the extract, and a note about it, and a link to executive or management personnel. And I'll come back to that linking in a minute. Well, I really did fix some of these links this morning, but the point is that you can click it. Here we go. I'm going to try the Amtel case. And what they've done is found the Amtel case maybe on Lexis, or maybe they found it in a book, but quickly then can bring it up in Lexis. They email it to themselves as a Word document. And then when they're trying to remember that little blurb that they cut out of the email document, the doc file that they got from Word, they're trying to remember the context of it and want to read the opinion again, they just click and open it because they've kept a file on their desktop that says research on stupid memo problem for my learning process class. And they've dumped all those email files in there, and now when they're in the research screen, they can actually link into it. And CaseMap not only helps them be organized, it also gives them one window into all of their work in that way that I've just demonstrated. So now let me show you the issue screen. This is really something that they write as they're working. You're absolutely right. I mean, they aren't really separable steps. You start it, you go back to writing, you come back here. At some point, though, this is the end of the semester. The student has figured out what the issues are and has started to outline their memo. Indeed, this is the end of the outline of their memo. And they've started to see, as they're developing the issues, the outline, they've started to make all those connections. I want to use this case to support this part of my memo. And these two cases together synthesize down to the following rule. So here's executive or management as an issue they've identified in their memo. We go back to the authorities and extract screen, and you can see how in the Porter v. Higgins case, there's that link over to the issue executive or management. You see a little dotted line under it. That means that it's actually linked over to the issue screen. And again, it facilitates their thinking and linking that precedes good, organized legal writing. That's my case map story. Fire away your questions. Yes?
And this might be a little bit of a nitpicky question, but I was a little bit concerned about the survey. The question, did this help you complete your assignments? I'm just wondering whether the students interpreted that as a self-answering question in the sense that this was an assignment.
That's fair.
But I'm also curious, is it always the database and the database queries based interface, or are there visual tools to help organize this material, like crosses and arrows?
I had a very interesting conversation with Greg Crehill, who's the CEO of CaseSoft and one of the major programmers of earlier versions of it, just a few days ago, to let him know that I was coming here to talk about his software. You might get a few phone calls. Had a number of conversations with Greg over the last year. What I told him was my number one, thank you for the question, because I wanted to tell you all this. My number one criticism, my number one suggestion for the next version of CaseMap, which he took down and said he would take to his programmers, is that what we really need are two different kinds of outliners built in. The one that's there is a very traditional Roman numeral 1, ABC kind of outline, the kind of outline we all learned in high school. But what we need is an outliner that's much more graphical, as you're suggesting, that's more visual for those people who outline that way or think that way or make these kinds of thinking and linking steps that way. And he said, you know, when the first rev of CaseMap, the outliner was like that, and I completely freaked out every practicing lawyer I showed it to. And you can understand how that might have happened. But I see what you're saying. Why couldn't there be a button? Why couldn't there be a button that would be outlined in this form, outlined in that form, and have a more graphical outliner like mind map or something like that? I would really like to see that in the next version of CaseMap, and I was very clear with Greg about that. I think it's something that's not working quite perfectly. In terms of the survey comment, you know, do students love this and consider it their salvation through first year of law school? No. The people, though, there's a direct correlation between the ones that used it heavily and got into it, felt like they were comfortable with it, and their opinion of it. Absolutely straight line connection. Yes, we got all the professors to support doing it, but when they stood up in class to explain it to their students, how well did they do in terms of selling it as something that they believed in 100%? There is a direct correlation between the student's opinion of the software and the extent to which their professor was comfortable with it and sold it. The preliminary survey data we have also shows us that. So is it manna from heaven? No. From a teacher's point of view, does it make a difference? I'm standing here saying I think it did.
Well, that was my question. I know you said that formal assessment is coming down the line. Did you and your colleagues have a sense that maybe you could quantify, this helps 10% of the students improve 20%, or, I mean, that's asking for a lot, I apologize, but what is your sense of the value of it?
I will express my answer not in 10 or 10 of 20%, which would be the next something further than what we have. But what I will tell you is that we had our spring end of the year retreat. We spent a day going through all kinds of things about the program, both backward looking and forward looking. CaseMap came up in that discussion. I was frankly expecting more heat about it than I got. More discussion about, do we really have to do this again? There was none. Zero. What there was instead, we passed over it fairly quickly. Okay, I explained that we're upgrading to CaseMap version 5 for the fall. We're probably using two different problems because, people all have their different opinions about whether one problem works better than the other to teach things. The discussion was about that. There was virtually no discussion about using CaseMap again. So that tells me there's some percentage in their minds, and different ones for each of them, that's fairly positive as the ultimate result. Yeah.
Is there any talk about expanding into other core courses? I mean, are the contracts people interested? Are the torts people interested? Or can it be used in another context?
Well, the clinic people are all over me. I'll tell you that.
Right.
The contracts and property people, there isn't, I think, a very good fit for their students to use it in their classes. But the clinic people, you can see the connection for the clinic, and they will probably be using it, switching from other software they're using. Now, here is an exceedingly interesting and one that I didn't really expect to have happen about CaseMap use outside of the first-year program. Our faculty had formed last year a committee called the Faculty Development Committee. Maybe some of your law schools have a similar kind of thing. We had a lot of new faculty, 6 new lines approved. So a lot of new people coming in and young, starting off tenure track people. So they formed this faculty development committee to try and get some workshops going and to help those teachers, get some traction and get comfortable doing it. And they covered all kinds of topics. Well, one of the topics they covered, actually over 2 different workshops, was scholarship. And in one of those, I went to all of these. I've been teaching for 25 years in about 10 different contexts, but I love learning new stuff, and I wanted to hear what they would say. I went to the workshop. In one of the scholarship workshops, they were talking about how to categorize all those little pieces of material that come to you from various different sources that fit into a bucket that you want to write about, that you want to write some scholarship about. That's a real concern for particularly the tenured track, non-tenured, tenured track faculty. And people shared opinions about various ways to do that. One of them has this system with a file, a traditional paper file. And she retypes things because that helps her remember. Brilliant, that works for her. But the use of CaseMap, I said, what about using CaseMap this way? And got a whole lot more interest in that than I expected. That turned into a workshop that I led for our faculty, using CaseMap to keep track of your own research for scholarship. It's using it in a fairly different way than we use it, but a lot of parallels between the two. Well, boy, did that get interesting, because pretty soon I realized, I'm scratching my head figuring out what I'm going to say to these folks, pretty soon I realized I can put that CaseMap file on a shared drive, and your research assistants can stuff things into the case. At one point, one of the young faculty said, you mean every student who's just graduated from first year that I might hire to be a research assistant knows this software? Boy, were they interested in that. So you can share this data file somewhere, and various research assistants can start plugging into it. Of course, then you see the connection, the ability to open up the actual document, that the student has found. Instead of the traditional way, which for me has always been the Redwell, I'm from the East, so we call them Redwell, expandable folders, the rest of the world calls them. Expandable folder full of, newspaper bits and bits of information that don't really show me any linking when I look at the overstuffed file. Well, here's a way to use CaseMap for that. So I think that's starting to grow.
That was something I thought might have been exciting about West's rollout last year of the CDs of, I forgot what it's called, but it was a case organizing, a research organizing tool for students. And I thought that would be useful for faculty, for my file by file faculty.
Yes.
But I could never sell it to them. But this one might fly, especially if students actually use it.
And the research assistants can contribute to it. Yes.
So the linking strength of this is that because you have these different spreadsheets, the data you extracted from your cases, you go to one place and you scan the facts of all the cases in little boxes that you put together in this one problem. And you go to some other place and you have rules that have been extracted, or just key quotes. What were the four things? One was facts, one was
Object.
object. What were objects?
The document itself.
Okay. Where you got this?
Yeah. One of the things we provided them was a video.
Well, that's for the facts of your own case, but aren't you using it also for the cases that you're researching from? In which case the object would always be the case report?
No, I'm sorry, objects are not stuff you've gotten from the cases. Oh, it's not showing up here because of my weird video card in this laptop. But there's a fancy video that our ed tech department developed, a promotional video for the company, for the person that our client works for now, and that was an object. No, objects are documents, people, organizations, or other evidence, other pieces of information other than cases and statutes. That goes in the extracts. Yes?
How many students do you have, and how much did this increase your workload?
Our learning process, the first year of class is about 350 every year. How much did it increase my workload?
Right.
I have 2 jobs. I work like a dog around the clock, but legal writing teachers are profoundly underpaid, and to make the transition to practice, I had to figure out something else, and this timing was fortuitous. So I essentially have 2 jobs, and I do my teaching, but I also am in charge of all this kind of stuff. So last summer I had not a moment's rest, and this summer isn't looking much better. But at least I'm getting some compensation for the additional work, and I'm happy doing it. I'm fascinated with these questions. I'm deeply interested, as I said at the start. Okay, we got this technology. It's virtually ubiquitous. How are we actually going to use it to do more than email and surf the net and download stuff from iTunes? How are we actually going to use it as teachers to really leverage it for a more active learning environment, a better teaching environment, where more learning and greater retention is the outcome? That's what I'm interested in. In a whole host of ways. This is just one of them that I'm talking about today. Yes?
You're able to assess the increase in quality of the written products that the students came up with using this as opposed to not having it. The grades higher, was the distribution a little bit better? Have you looked at those numbers yet?
That survey is underway. But I will tell you, and we're curved. So are grades higher? No. They can't be. But I feel very strongly, and I think some of my colleagues do, that the output we got at the end of the day, the final memo at the end of the fall semester was better than last year. How much of that is CaseMap? How much of that is we're all better teachers? We had a better round of students with higher GPAs. I mean, that's the survey stuff that has to be done very carefully by our Office of University Assessment, and that is underway. But anecdotally, gut feeling, we think the products were better. And that's why I think the response to the discussion about CaseMap was so, okay, at some point, there's some level where each teacher is thinking, you know, this is a positive of some kind. Let's keep going and see how much of a positive. How much better we can do next year, knowing more about it. Time for one more question, if there is one. Come
I
on.
have just a silly technical question. So, and I think she was getting to this, the graphical thing, so I understand the outlining thing, but how do they enter this information? Do they type it in that box, or is there a form?
I'm sorry, you absolutely typed it in the box. Let me
You
show you.
type it in the box?
Let me show you how to create a new object, because that's the screen that's up. You click New, and it says, what kind of object? Other object, is it a person? No, it's a person. Okay, who is it? You type in what you want. Then you tab over, it creates a short name for you, and then you link to the file. It's just a matter of, it's like filling out an Excel spreadsheet. Exactly.
That's what I wondered if it was like that, or if there was form-based
No,
interaction.
there's a little form-based interaction that's not quite as intuitive as it should be in the abstract screen, but once you understand it, then it's not that hard. Yes, question.
I'm just curious if you're using CaseMap.
We are not using any of the other companion products that CaseSoft comes up with. Joan.
You thought that where all the buttons are that was
CaseMap has several companion products that do some also cool things. We are not using any of them in the first year program. In the summer, I teach a course called Discovery Practicum. I'm deep into that class right now. But we're probably going to use their Depot Prep companion product. I'm using CaseMap in my Discovery Practicum class. We're using Depot Prep because they're actually preparing for depositions at the end of June, and we'll see how that works. But in the first year program, just that one. We have licensed all of those. We have a free license. I'm surprised nobody asked this question. Ray Creedhill has given to us a free license for every first year student to all of their products. Buckets.
He'll give it to everybody, because we just got it too. The end of law school.
He's using the Lexis model.
Yeah.
I mean, and it makes sense. I talked to him about it. I didn't have to do much convincing. He sees the wisdom of it. So, free to your students. It's just CaseMap is about a $350 to $400 piece of software. The whole suite is probably $1,000 or more each student. It is the end of the day. Let's quit 5 minutes early. Thank you all very much.
one of those red covered buses that. Oh, really? Oh, it's a huge one, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I came in late to your presentation.
Well, that's all right.
I thought that was great.
Oh, thanks.
And then I came in and I was
You're
told.
using it?
Yeah, well,
Tell
I
me
have
where you
a
work.
licensing for it at American University Washington
Oh,
College.
great. Sure.
And
I've lived in Washington.
we're going to roll it out. I want it to come down because I want to roll it out to the clinic and to the trial advocacy and
Sure.
all that kind of stuff. But it hadn't occurred to me at
Legal
all
writing.
for legal writing. It's perfect. And so I want to do a demo. I'm going to get the CALI tape and show the legal writing teachers what you can print out.
Great.
It's great.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
And then
I finally got an idea. This year I haven't gotten any ideas.
I haven't either.
This is a good
I've
one.
been so frustrated. Thank you for saying
Yeah,
that.
sure.
I actually got
Hi, honey. Has Lonnie been there? Just getting there? Okay. All right, well, I just finished up I'm on my way back to the hotel room to drop things and trying to figure out how to get to Wilmette. So maybe I'll call you in the cab when I'm going out there. Oh, really? It's nasty. Oh, my. So you've got girls? Is Mike coming over? So Lonnie just got there, or he just left? Okay. Well, it shouldn't take him too long. Okay, and he's downstairs. Probably that settling torch. Okay, would you call me on my cell when he leaves? Which will be probably after that. Oh.